Hello, friends. I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. Today, I am bringing you my top 20 new to me games from 2024. Back in the middle of 2024, July timeframe, I did my top 10 up to that point. And since then, I played 17 new to me games. And so going back and looking at all the games I played for the first time ever in 2024 and bringing you my top 20 games. And as part of that, I'm going to talk about where some of the top 10 games that were on the list now sit, whether they've moved up, down, or even off the list completely. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into this. First of all, I want to talk about the fact that I did play 52 new to me games in 2024. That was 2 less than in 2023, so about on par. And I met my average of playing 1 new game a week average. That's kind of what my goal is to try to get at least 52 new to me games in each year. And I had a good flux of new to me games kind of in the middle of the year. I was slow at the beginning of the year and really slowed down towards the end of the year as well. But at the year's end, I got 52 new to me games in, from which I threw them into Pub Meeple. If you're not aware of what Pub Meeple is, basically it's just a ranking site where you can throw in all kinds of different lists for different things. And one of those things is Board Game, where they can pull from Board Game Geek all your plays and you can filter it however you need to. So I filtered down all the new to me games I played this year, all 52 of them. I put them into the Pub Meeple ranking system, and all it does is throws 2 games at you, and then you go through and just pick one of the 2 that it throws at you, and at the end of doing that a bunch of times, it spits out your rankings. So that's how I got to these final 20. Basically, I just went through as these games matched up, and I went at that moment, if I were to pick one or the other to play right now in this moment, which one would I pick? And I selected that way. And that's how I came up with this list. So you're going to see a lot of my style of games. If you've been following me for a while, you know kind of what my style of game is. They're more Euro, more action selection, management, thinky games than not. But there are some of those other types on this list as well, as you'll see. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and look at my list, starting with an honorable mention. It's the one right here over my shoulder, Ezra and Nehemiah. It was a new to me kind of play in 2023 because I was part of playtesting for the solo mode in preparation for this game, coming to Kickstarter and getting made. And then finally, the physical copy arrived here in 2024. It was a new 2024 game officially, but because I played it in playtesting mode somewhat in 2023, I didn't get included in that list as a new to me game. But because I've played it already before, I didn't really consider it a new to me game now that I've got the physical copy. So it doesn't really have anywhere to show up on these lists. So therefore, it's going to be my honorable mention, Ezra and Nehemiah. It would have probably cracked around my top 5 in this list if it was included. So if you want to keep that in mind as we go through the list, somewhere in the top 5 to 10, Ezra and Nehemiah would have shown up on this list as well. Which would have knocked off my number 20, which is going to be Weather Machine. Number 20, Weather Machine from Vital Lacerda and Eagle Gryphon Games. I got this one recently this year, and I have enjoyed playing it. I've only played it solo a couple of times. It really took a lot to kind of grasp what I was doing, but once I got into it, I really did enjoy it. And just like all the Lacerda games, it's a tight action selection, thinky, kind of worker placement, worker movement, because there's only 4 places your workers can go, and it's got to go somewhere different each turn, so kind of only 3 places. But you can really play to trigger other actions on top of actions on top of actions, and that's really what you want to do, is set yourself up so you can kind of take a multiple action turn and really get the most out of a turn, and then maybe take a turn or 2 to build up for another big turn. And all you're doing is trying to build a weather machine to control the weather while avoiding the hiccups that come from the weather machine kind of going woozy. I don't know the the full background of the story, but that's basically what you're doing. Is you're doing things to help develop this futuristic weather machine in the weather machine, but really it's kind of worker action selection, management of resources, and trying to really combo things together. I really liked it, but it is really heavy, really thinky, and it took me a really long time to kind of grasp. So it sits at number 20 just because I'm not sure I want to pull it out and kind of go through the brain burn of it again over these other games, but it is an enjoyable play. My number 19 is going to be Wishland. This was a game that came out, I believe, in 2022 or thereabouts, and then recently there was a Kickstarter with the new expansion, the Wishland Dreams for America, and I went ahead and backed it because I liked the concept of it. It's worker selection and card tableau building as you build out an amusement park. So you're drafting or buying rides and entertainment and stalls and various things. But the thing that really caught my eye is how the worker placement works, because you're placing workers out onto the spots to take the actions or buy the cards for your tableau. And in order to place at that spot, you have to place more workers than the number of different workers that are there already, even if there's your own workers sitting there. It's basically if the first person goes to the spot, they'll place one worker. And if that one worker is still sitting there, the next person, even if it's you again, will have to place 2 workers. And now there are 2 workers on the spot, so the next person who goes must play 3 workers. Hopefully you understand kind of what I'm saying there. And I thought that was really neat. And not to mention, there's no round structure or anything in this. You can pull back your workers as an action on one of your turns, and that'll make all those spots that you just retrieved workers from, cheaper to go to for everybody else. So you're kind of balancing that management of workers and getting more workers and getting more resources and building your tableau and triggering your tableau to make things cheaper and easier for you in the future, and really just building out your amusement park to score the best you can. I like the theme. I really like the worker placement, action selection, management of it. So that's Wishland, my number 19 new to me game. Number 18 new to me game from 2024 is going to be a 2-player game, and so one of the more popular 2-player games, although I think this is being replaced by a game that just came out recently with the Lord of the Rings Duel or whatever it's called. I haven't played it. I'm not even really a Lord of the Rings fan, but I've heard it's replaced my number 18 game, that's Seven Wonders Duel. I played for the first time this year with a buddy of mine. I like Seven Wonders. It's been a long time since I played Seven Wonders. It just became a little bit more than I wanted to play and teach and stuff, so I got rid of it. I have the Architects version, which is a much easier version, and my buddy has the Duel, Seven Wonders Duel. And in this one, you're just taking turns, taking from a pyramid of cards to add to your tableau and to get the resources in order to purchase more and more cards as you go, or to fight for the power of combat, because you can auto win if you get enough combat. You can auto win from getting the right collection of sciences. So you really got to manage what's out there on the pyramid and what you might be unlocking, because as you open up cards from one row, the cards that they were sitting on top of, if that card is now free, then that card becomes available for your opponent. So it was a lot of thinky action, not action selection, but card selection and tableau building, and just back and forth, trying to get the plays that not only help you, but also don't help your opponent more. Sometimes you might have to take something you didn't want as much, just so that way it keeps your opponent from taking a card they really need. So I really like that. Seven Wonders Duel. It's a great little 2-player game. Number 17 is Coimbra. This game I've only played once relatively recently, and it's basically a dice action selection game where you're using dice to go to different spots and then purchase more cards to kind of build your tableau up a little bit, and generate things to help you do more things as you go. I only played this one time, so I'm a little rusty on the exact play of it, but I know it's getting the dice out and using dice, the values to make turns, because I think the lower value goes first for most of the actions, but higher values go first for a couple of the other actions. And so you want to make sure you're using the dice in a way to be able to get what you really want from each row or action as you're building up cards and trying to get those into your area and keep them from your opponents. It was a neat little game, Coimbra. I definitely want to play it again, mostly because I'm kind of rusty on even the play of it, but it was an enjoyable game. I really like the dice action selection placement mechanism, and again, card tableau. A lot of common themes in my games I enjoy. Number 16 is another 2-player game that my buddy owns that we played together, and it is Patchwork. In Patchwork, you're going around and just picking up pieces of a quilt and putting them on your board, and scoring points based off of, buttons that are on them, or, filling up your quilt, your board, whatever you want to do at the end of the game. And you might be trying to meet certain goals. Again, I haven't played this in a while. I don't own it, so I can't even look at it. But I really liked the fact that you're kind of mathing out the best moves for you, and using your time element in a way, because the better piece you take, the more it's going to cost you in movement points, I guess. And so that allows your opponent to potentially get 2 or 3 moves in on their turn now, because it's whoever's behind in the track gets to go. So, if you're taking small ones, you could get a couple of them build up before you catch back up to be ahead of your opponent. So you're managing a lot of different things while you're building up your little quilt, and, buttons count as points, and I think currency. And I just really enjoyed that one. It was a great little thinky 2-player game. Again, kind of like the one I mentioned at my number 18. And I'm not usually one who plays 2-player games all that often. That'll take us to number 15, which is another game that uses the time track concept, where, if you're behind in literally in this game, the time track, because it's trekking through history, you're building up a tableau, going through eras of things. You're going to draft from the tableau something to add to your timeline, and it's got to be something more in the future of your current most recent event. So let's say I draft 1823, whatever event that is, then my next event has to be later than 1823. But if there are none of those events out there on the board, then I might have to just close off that timeline and start a new timeline with my card draft. And you're trying to just get your timelines bigger, because the more cards you have at the end of the game in each of your timelines, the more points you're going to score. But along the way, you're also collecting whatever resources they give you, because there are 4, I think, different tracks of your board you're going to play in every area. There are 3 areas you're playing through, and you're going to try to put the different tokens on that board and get various awards for getting more and more down the board, or getting things lined up. You're going to earn either wild tokens or points, or more time, gems basically you turn into save you time, because the cards also have a time value. And again, like I said with the other game, Patchwork, you're literally using time. So if I'm drafting a card that costs 4 time, I've got to move 4 ahead on the time generator, the time wheel, and then whoever's last in the time wheel gets to go. So if they get something that only costs 1 time, then maybe they haven't caught you yet, and they'll get a second turn, and so on and so on. So I really like this. I like history, and I like it's a real easy, fun little game that we played a couple times, and really enjoy trekking through history. My number 14 new to me game from 2024 is a game I've only got to the table 1 time. It took a long time, but it was still a lot of fun. And it's got 2 phases. First, it's got a drafting phase where you're going kind of rondel style around the Tea Party table, because it's Wonderland's War. You're going through the Mad Hatter's Tea Party and drafting cards to use for the later phases. You're either going to get more troops that you're going to send to the board, because the second phase is an area control war phase where you're playing cards and troops to try to take control of the 5 or 6 different areas around Wonderland. And you're doing it all through bag building. You're building up tokens into a bag, and then you're drawing them out during the war phase to add basically power to your battle, or you're going to lose troops in that battle. And when you lose all the troops in a battle, you can't win. And sometimes you just want to stop the war, because you're going to get things based on your goal cards and things like that, based on where you are on the fight track. So you might not even be trying to win, but your opponents don't know that, because you've got this secret objective you're trying to get. I just really like the concept and the art and the theme of Wonderland's War, and the 2-phase rondel card deck building, bag building, and then the area control bag drafting and pulling and scoring, and it's a lot of fun. I wish I could get it to the table more, but it was quite a bit to set up and learn and play, so I just haven't been able to do it more than the one time. But that one time left the impression on me enough to make this my number 14 new to me game from 2024. My number 13 new to me game from 2024 is one of the new Stefan Feld. He's my favorite designer as of now. I've mentioned that in other videos. And this is going to be Kuzco, which is a re-implementation of Bora Bora. In this game, you're again using the Drive. In this game, you're again using dice action selection. You're rolling the dice, and then you're taking them to the various spots. And you can't go to a spot with a die that has a higher value than yours. Or maybe it's lower. One or the other. So basically you need to manage how you're going to these slots, how you're using the dice, because you want to make sure you're using the dice with, it's the lower value. You must go lower than your opponents to play there. But the value of the dice is the power of that spot. So if you play a 6 at something, you're going to use basically 6 worth of actions for that action. But you can't go if somebody's played a 5 or lower, because 6 is higher than 5. Whereas if you play the 1, you can go basically anywhere, but you're only going to get a power 1 action. And it's like a lot of other Stefan Feld games where you're just doing a bunch of things to score points in a bunch of ways. You're working on your tableau. You've got various turn goals you got to meet to get points every round, or negative points if you don't meet goals. You're building up this the art in this one is just great. You're building up a beautiful flower headdress is your game board. You're going around on the map. You're going up the priest temple to try to score points, and it's just got a lot going on. Another Stefan Feld game that I really enjoy, just for the thinkiness of the minimal actions, minimal resources, and just trying to get the most points, because everything's going to get you points, but how are you going to get the most points? And that's why I like Kuzco, which is a re-implementation of Bora Bora, which I have not played either. Oh, and the one thing I didn't mention is the change from my previous list, and I'll let you know right now, numbers 20 through 13 were all new to the list. They were not on my original top 10 at the midpoint of the year, and that's about to change because my number 12 was number 7 on my previous top 10 list from the midpoint of the year, and that is Thunder Road Vendetta. In Thunder Road Vendetta, you are going out kind of Mad Max style, and you're racing to the end of the track through the desert and trying to avoid broken down cars, other cars, or maybe you're not trying to avoid them. Maybe you're actively going after them because you can attack other cars, you can shoot at them. But the thing is, you might not win the battle. If you crash into them, you might be the one who loses your car. So just a lot of fun dice chucking, not normally my style of game, but this one's just real fun, real quick, and there's different ways to win. You can win trying to play strategic and just racing to the end and letting everybody else battle it out, or you can just try to win through attrition and be the last car standing. So I like Thunder Road Vendetta. It's fun, it's quick, it's easy. Dice chucker game. Not normally my style, but this one for sure I enjoy. Number 11 is another new one. Wasn't in my original top 10. And number 11 and number 10 basically tied, and I would almost say they're very similar games, as we'll talk about them. But number 11 is Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, and this is kind of a game where you're just managing cards to try to build ships. Ships are going to give you points or more resources. This game you're going to have a hand of, I think, 6 cards each round. And you can use them, again, as ships that you want to build. You can use them as like huts and buildings that you can also attach the worker cards to and use as additional worker placement spots, because you're managing workers, you're managing resources, and you've got certain builder types that can build ships, and you need the right builder type to build the right ship. The one thing you can do instead of playing any of them is to discard them for whatever resource they provide you as well, because you're trying to build up the resources to build the ships in your tableau area. And the ships will give you points. They'll give you in-game scoring objectives or one-time benefits. Your huts will give you in-game points. Any workers or jarls you have attached to those huts will give you resources and points. And you're just trying to go through, I think, 5 rounds, maybe 6, of managing your hand. And at the end of every round, you're going to have played every card somewhere, even if it's just set up in your ship yard to build it in the future. But you're just doing whatever you can, the best you can, through drafting of cards into your hand and then utilization of those cards for their abilities to get you the ships and things that you need to continue doing that through the 5. I'm pretty sure it's 5 rounds. So, Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, a new Garphill game, re-implementation of Shipwrights of the North Sea, which wasn't the same exact play style, but I really enjoyed that one as my number 11. And like I mentioned, for my number 10, a really similar game, and I have a really hard time deciding which of the two I'd pull. I pull them both out. They play very similar in that you're managing your tableau or your hand of cards. But the thing I like about my number 10, and this one was number 8 on my previous list, so it's fallen 2 spots to 10. It's Stone Spine Architects. In this game, you're building up a tableau, which is building a dungeon for some hero to later come through. And in this dungeon, you've got traps, you've got treasures, you've got goblins and monsters and various things. But you're trying to meet an objective card because you have an objective card with 2 per row. You're building basically a 4x4 tableau at the end of the game. That is your dungeon. And you've got a card that has 2, so I guess 8 total of the 16 squares you're going to have that have a single requirement. You're going to score how you do that best. You're also going to score for how well you've made a path through your dungeon, because you've got an entrance and an exit, and if you can manage to get a path all the way from one to the other, you're going to score points for every card that connects to either ends of those. So if you can get a whole path through, you're going to score at least 8 points twice, because you're going to score for the 8 cards going, or I guess 4 points technically, if it's a straight line. But they're dead end cards. There's everything, and then you're also earning money to spend on improvements to the dungeon, and for basically the right to select your round goal cards. And there's also a general end game card objective that everybody's going to be playing for as well. So it's just a lot going on in a simple card tableau building game that plays pretty quickly. I really like Stone Spine Architects. I think I like it slightly more than Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, just because it has that little bit more going on than just managing a hand. You're managing towards goals and things like that as well. So that's why I have it as the 10, but I would take either one of these out and play them, and they're pretty similar but different enough that I really do enjoy them both equally. My number 9 new to me game from 2024 is new to the list from the second half of the year. It's going to be Gugong. And Gugong, you're basically using card management to go do one of 6 action spots on the board. And there's cards on the board to start with. Maybe it's 9 action spots. No, I think it's just 6. Whatever. But the cards are numbered 1 through 9. And in order to take an action at the spot, you need to play a higher card than what's already at the spot. And 1s beat 9, so you can go around the horn a little bit in that regard. But in order to take directly the action at the spot, you got to play a higher card from your hand than the card that's on the spot, and leave that new card behind and take the card that was there into your discard pile, basically. And then when you go to that spot, you're going to do various things that are going to get you resources or points or actions or things like that. But you can also spend action cubes to, if you play a lower card, you're going to spend action cubes to go to the spot. And then at every spot, you're going to spend action cubes to do the action too. So you're managing action cubes, and you're managing the cards in your hand to be able to go to the spots you want to do, to collect the resources, the points, the goals. Those are 3 of the various spots. You're working up a wall in one of the spots, just different things around, this city. And I don't know, I just like it. It's good management of action cubes resources to kind of get points. It doesn't play very hard, but it's thinky enough that it was enjoyable. And so I really like Gugong for my number 9 new to me 2024 game. My number 8 new to me game from 2024 is the second to last new one appearing on the list. That means most of my top 7 are going to be ones that were in my original top 10. So that means they lasted through more than half the year for the most part. So good longevity on those games from the beginning of the year, and I feel like I've had a fair amount of games I enjoyed from the second half of the year because we've only thus far had 2 repeats from my original top 10 as well as we reached number 8. But enough about that. Let's talk about what number 8 is. Number 8 was a highly anticipated game for a year or two by a lot of people, mostly based on the art, but also the play style and the theme. Real neat. It is Unconscious Mind. It's a game that's got worker placement as you place these thought onto the worker placement board, and as you place them in spots, you're going to be using 1, 2, or 3 of them to take 1, 2, or 3 times whatever action it is that you're pointed at. But also, depending on which row you pointed at, you're going to get that much movement around on your little rondelle on the board. And that's going to trigger a bit of an engine building row as well. And so you're managing worker placement, you're managing engine building, you're managing some resource management as you try to help your patients get through their dreams and nightmares and cure them. Then there's a little bit of area control on a little map that you're working around. There's just quite a bit going on. It's a pretty thinky game, but it's not overly complex. I feel like I could teach this to a lot of my game group, and they'd pick it up pretty quick for as much as going on. But I just really like the worker placement, the action selection management, the goals, the fact that you're driving an engine, and so you want to manage how you're triggering that engine as you take your actions, because you can take the worker placement actions from multiple rows as long as they're not covered, depending on which way your idea cube points. And so I just really like all the thought and thinkiness that went in. And if I played this more, it'd probably be higher on the list, but I've only played it the one time so far. I really enjoy it. Unconscious Mind. And my number 8 new to me game from 2024. My number 7 new to me game from 2024 was number 5 on my previous list in my top 10 at the half year. So it also dropped 2 spots, and that's going to be a common theme amongst a lot of these, it looks like, as far as movement. But SkyTeam was my number 5. It's a 2-player co-op. You're landing a plane together, or you can play it solo. There's a little bit of a solo mode to it that's been created. I like the 2-player version of it personally. But you're secretly rolling 4 dice, and then without speaking, you're going to place them as the pilot or the co-pilot side of the board to clear the airspace, to get the flaps and brakes and everything set that you need to land, and then you're going to try to take it in for the landing as you get to the airport. And you need to make sure everything's level and everything's ready to go, all without talking the whole time, just from dice management and placement on the board. It won the Spiel It won the Game of the Year at the German Spiel, and it's deservedly so. I really enjoy playing this one. Another 2-player game on the list. It's a rare year where 2-player games are making a lot of my top favorites, but it's also a rare year where I get to play 2-player games, and I got a good amount in this year. So SkyTeam, my number 7. My number 6 new to me game for 2024 is a game that gets a lot of love all over the place, and I tried not to give into it because I like the other similar games. I've mentioned that before when I've talked about Dune Imperium, in this case Uprising, the newest version of Dune Imperium. But it really is a good solid game with worker placement again, action management with cards, resource management, a little bit of fight at the end of every round. Just a lot going on. A lot of goodness in the game. Everything I enjoy about gaming is wrapped up in Dune Imperium Uprising. Really like this game, and I'm not going to go on much about it. But it was my number 4 at the midpoint of the year, so it also dropped off 2 places. My number 5 new to me game, getting into the top 5 now, is going to be Lorenzo Il Magnifico. This game is another game where you're using dice placement to take actions that are going to get you cards in your tableau, and that tableau is going to build up an engine, and in the end you're just trying to get all the points you can by managing your engine, managing your work placement, managing resources, all the things I've liked and mentioned a lot of these other games. Lorenzo and Magnifico used to be in the top 100 games of all time. I think it's dropped out recently, but still pretty close. An older game, a well-loved game, and I found out why this year as I got it to the table for the first time. I really like just the managing of resources and money with minimal placement, because you've got a shared pool of dice in this one, 4 of them, so you're going to take 4 actions of those dice. And yeah, I really like this game, but not as much as I liked my number 4. Just because I played this one more, really is what it comes down to, and that's Newton. In Newton, you are using your cards. It's basically cards. You're playing them down on your tableau, and then every card's going to give you one of 5 different actions, I think, and those actions are going to do various things, mostly going up tracks or around the board. But basically, as you move up those tracks around the boards, you're going to trigger more things that are going to give you either resources or extra turns or whatever it is, points straight up. Or one of the actions is to be getting more cards into your hand, because you're going to need more cards in your hand, because at the end of every round you got to bury one of the cards out of the game for good. So you've got to make sure that at some point you're using a couple actions at least to get the cards, and they come in 3 power levels basically. And so the better, more power or more of those actions you can put into doing that action, you're going to take the higher powered cards and get more return on investment from it later in the game. So I really like this one just because, again, it's managing a bunch of different things, but it's easy, and it just comes down to playing the cards that you need in the order you want, and then moving up and around these tracks to your best benefit as you kind of race to take the items that are there. 'Cause some of them are going to go away if you're the first one to get it. Then the next player won't get a chance at that bonus, I guess. I just really like everything about Newton. It was my number 6 at the midpoint of the year, and that's why I said, like, it's just because I played it more. I played it quite a bit in one of my 10x4 solo plays, and so I got more plays of it, so it moved from 6 to 4 and supplanted Lorenzo and Dune Imperium in the process. My number 3 was number 1 at the midpoint of the year, and I've talked about this one so much, I'm not even gonna. I made a review of it a couple months back. It's Jiangnan Life of Gentry game. Again, bunch of things going on: action selection, worker placement, resource management, area control to an extent. So check out my review if you want to know more about it. But the midpoint of the year was my number 1. It's fallen 2 spaces to number 3, but I really enjoy it. Just maybe not as much as these other 2. First, my number 2 is just a game that I played more again. Although I played Jiangnan quite a bit, I think the more I played Rococo, just the more fun I've gotten out of it. So it moved from number 3 to number 2 since the middle of the year. And so Rococo is a game where, again, you're using cards to generate your actions. You're managing all kinds of resources, and you're doing area control. And in this game, you're just a sewer. You're making suits and dresses for party goers, and those party goers are going to be the area control, unless you sell the dresses off, and then you just get the money, and you can use the money for other actions later. But there's just so many different things to do in this game, all while managing the cards you have to use at your disposal and building up the resources you need to go out and score the most points. It's a lovely game. I really enjoy Rococo. I love everything about the way it plays and how it plays, and so that's why it's my number 2. I did again play it a few more times, so that might have swayed it moving up a little bit. But it can't really give me recency bias. Usually, like, I kind of expected more of the recent new to me plays to be lower on the list, but they were all kind of in the 20 to 10 range. And everything that I played at the beginning of the year kind of hovered in that 10 to 2 range, except for one game. One game is newer to me than was played in July, and that game has risen all the way to the top. I played it for real, solo, a good handful of times, and I played it online recently as well, and it's Revive. Revive is a game where, again, you're managing resources through card action selection to get points. Similar to other games. It's hard to describe these games and make them sound different without really getting into the detail about it. But it's another one of those games where you're just managing what you do when you do it. When you're triggering things, you're using turns to build up for bigger turns later. You're, again, going out and researching and placing on a board that'll move you up tracks, and tracks will open up abilities to give you more actions. And in the solo game, you've got a limited number of actions before you just run out and you're kind of beating your own score. In the full version of Revive, it's kind of race to get the artifacts, and so you don't know exactly as well when the game's going to end, but you can see it coming, and you're just trying to make sure when your last turn comes around, you're not at a point where you need to rest, because rest is basically doing nothing except reset your board again. So you really want to time everything you're doing in this game and getting the most return on investment from every turn, because on your turn you're going to take 2 actions, and that can be placing cards for resources, that can be using resources for actions, whether it's exploring or placing developments or whatever the case is, and that's it. So whether you want to do a turn of just resource gathering, a turn where you resource gather for in a turn, or a turn where you have your resources and you're going out and taking 2 better actions, whatever the case is. So I really have enjoyed my plays of Revive, and that's why it's my number 1 new me game from 2024. So with that said, about wraps up the list. Real quickly before I do straighten the outro, there were 8 games that stayed on my list from my original top 10. 2 fell off. It's a Wonderful World fell off of my list. It was number 10 or 9 last time, and it got bumped to 21, I believe. I like the game, but these other games I just like more than It's a Wonderful World. And the same can be said about Three Ring Circus. That one fell off the list from number 10. And I don't know. The more I've played that one 3 times, I think. And the more I've played it, the more I've kind of cooled on it, really. So just, I don't know. But those are the 2 that fell off the list. And 12 new ones made it, plus the 8 that were originally on the top 10. So that's it. I appreciate you following along for this bit of a longer video about the top 20 new to me games from 2024. I think only a couple more were actually from 2024, because I don't get my hands on many of the newer games. So at some point I might do my favorite games from 2024, but that'll be sometime in the future when I've had a chance to play more of them. But if you like my style of games, maybe these are some recommendations for you to check out, so they can be some new to you plays if you haven't played them before. And if not, whatever. I hope you enjoyed the video either way. Give me a thumbs up. Subscribe below if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Bye.